Alright, for the past 2 days in class, we've been working on writing our persuasive essay. And today we're going to start revising what we've already written, and we're going to focus on idea and content, which, if you'll recall, are part of the 6+1 writing traits that we're using for our writer's notebook. As a refresher, idea is the main message that the writer is trying to convey in their paper, and content is the information and facts that the writer uses to back up that main message or idea. Here's an example of an idea and content rubric. I'd like to give you a few minutes here so you can read through. Alright, I was joking about minutes. As you can see, these are scored 4 being exceptional, 3 being generally focused and clear, 2 being somewhat clear, and 1, the writer is only occasionally clear and focused, and then NA are not applicable, and 0 is when it's just generally unclear and focused. We'll be talking more about this rubric in the future, but I just wanted you to get an idea of what a rubric in our class looks like. Okay. As I said earlier, for the past 2 days, we've been writing our persuasive essay in small chunks. And today we're going to continue using that small chunk method, but we're going to start revising. And we're going to start with our introduction and then work our way through the rest of the paper. So, introduction and thesis statement. At this time, if you don't have your checklist open on your computer, I'd like for you to open it. You can pause the video if you would like. This video is designed to move at your pace and with you as you create and focus your revision. So feel free to pause, fast forward, rewind, whatever makes this easy for you. Okay, so our first thing we're going to focus on is your introduction being engaging. So is it engaging? Yes or no? If you'll recall, we talked earlier about how introductions that just start with a thesis statement are maybe not perhaps as engaging as an introduction that pulls in an experience or a situation or a quote. So at this time, I'd like for you to read over your introduction with your thesis statement and answer the question on your checklist. Depending on if you choose yes or no, you'll need to fill out the checklist accordingly. The next question is helping you focus more on your thesis statement or position sentence. And really at this point, we should stop calling it a position sentence and really start using the term thesis statement. For our next few papers, that term is going to become very important. So as a critic of your writing, can you identify and find the idea or main message of your essay in the introduction? Yes or no? So what I'm asking you here is that if you can't easily identify what your thesis statement is, there's a really good chance that it's also not going to be clear to the readers of your essay. So, indicate whether it is clear or it is not clear, and then answer the question on your checklist. I is a very big part of our language. You are Generation Me, as I like to call you, and you have heard me say probably a couple 100 times. But are you using I in your essay? If you are, we need to remove it. The pronoun I, although very important to general speech and what we talk about, especially as we convey our feelings, is not really necessary in academic writing. And one of the reasons is because I is implied. when you're giving your opinion or you are giving a statement of fact, if you keep saying I believe or I think, you're being redundant. And so we just want to remove I, and I think you'll see as you go back and you read over your essay that you really don't need it at all. Trust me. So take a few moments, go through your checklist, and answer that question honestly, and then spend a few more minutes going through your essay and removing any instance in which you have I. Now, for some of you, there may be an exception. Perhaps you used first-person perspective to create an introduction for your paper, and then you shift into more academic formal writing. And I would say probably for this paper that would be okay, but for another paper we'd have to talk about if that's necessary or not. Alright, we're going to move on to looking at our supporting reasons in our persuasive essay, and we're going to start revising our content. Our first question is going to help us focus our argument, and it asks if, when you present your supporting reasons, do you have a clear organization of the information? If you answer yes, please answer accordingly on your checklist, and if you answer no, please answer accordingly on your checklist. But what I mean here is, are you repeating yourself? Are you saying the same thing over and over again, but in different ways? And are you finishing your thoughts? Students oftentimes, when they're grasping for answers, we sometimes start to repeat ourselves and become redundant, and we might say the same thing in 3 different ways, so it doesn't seem like we're saying the same thing. But if we're looking back with a critical eye and we're being honest and reflective, we'll probably notice that we're repeating ourselves. So take a few minutes here to answer your checklist, and to also go through your paper and get rid of any sentences that you seem to think are repetitive, or reword them so that maybe they do actually become sentences that are different. Alright, next we're going to look at transition sentences. Transition sentences are the sentences we use between our paragraphs. They should help bridge the gap between one idea to the next. And so the question I ask you here is, do you have strong transition sentences? And do you move seamlessly from one supporting reason to the next? If you indicate yes, please answer the question provided to you on the checklist accordingly. And if you answer no, please do the same thing. But the really important thing here is to look for, in your writing, flow. You want your paper to flow, and you want it to have a logical order. So if you go through and you're reading your sections and something sticks out, or it doesn't flow as well as it should into the next topic, maybe you should circle it or put an X through it and think about how we can make it flow better with the subject either before or after it. Take a few minutes to look through your writing and make any changes that you might need, or add in transition sentences that you may not have already. Alright, validity. I know for many of you, you asked me how important sources were going to be for this first part of our essay, and I told you that at first, really what I wanted you to do was focus on getting your thoughts onto the paper. But now I want you to go back and really examine and see if you're providing sources and research to back up your argument. And if you're not, now would be a really great time to think about how you could add in sources and research to back up your argument. Now, normally we would have our sources and our research done first. So this is a little bit different. I'm letting you get your opinions out first, and then we're building backwards. The other thing I want you to think of when we think of validity in persuasive essay writing is allowing time to discuss the opposing argument in your essay. It's really important to be aware of the other side's argument and to be willing to address it. So take some time here on your checklist and mark if you did provide sources or research and if you didn't, and if you allowed time for the opposing argument or if you did not. Alright, now we're going to look at our conclusion. And this kind of helps us focus the finish of our essay. And I really don't have a lot to say here, and I'll show you why. Your conclusion should restate the purpose of your paper. So when we say it should restate it, I mean that you should really repeat your thesis statement, and you should repeat your supporting reasons, and in this case we have 3 of them. You want to make sure that you leave your audience thinking about what you want them to think about as they leave that paper. So ask yourself these 3 questions. The first one, do you restate your thesis statement or position sentence? Do you also restate your 3 supporting reasons? And do you bring your paper to a concise and logical close? We don't want to restart the argument in the conclusion. We also don't really want to bring up any extra points in the conclusion. We really just want to say, thank you for reading our paper. You don't actually have to say thank you, but this was my point. These were my supporting reasons. And this is what I want you to think about as you go out and read other position papers or persuasive papers about the subject. At this time, I'd like for you to go back and use this video and use your checklist and make sure that you're answering those questions in complete and thoughtful sentences. And that if you need to, you're going back and listening to what the video has to tell you. Once you finish your checklist, go ahead and turn that in on Gaggle, and we will get started on the next phase of revision. Thank you, and good luck on finishing your assignment.